even if you achieve some pretty amazing things, tomorrow is not promised. Do everything that you possibly can to enjoy the time that you have here on this earth.
Don't fight the river, be the river. Just enjoy where the river's taking me and enjoy life and what's around me and where that river's taking me.
Creativity is God's gift to us. Our gift back to God is using our creativity.
Welcome back to Ignition Point, the channel for entrepreneurs. I'm Debbie Hart.
And I'm Sean Finnegan. We want to welcome our guests today, Emilio and Rachel. They are founders of Relationship Renegade.
These guys are both multiple entrepreneurs, which is fun because we are too. This is the first time you guys have done a project together, right? So tell us how you came up with the idea, and then we're going to want to hear the challenges of working together as a couple on a project like that.
Yeah, I mean, Relationship Renegades is both of our pain to purpose stories of really going through so many unhealthy, toxic relationships on the journey to find each other. And really on that journey that was extremely hard, especially as I'm an actress, I'm a filmmaker in that industry. One of the things that Emilio said when we first met was, well, you're an actress and there's not really any healthy, long lasting relationships in Hollywood. And I was like, no, it's not true. It's just all that you hear about.
Right.
In the media. And so one of the missions at Relationship Renegades is to create a platform to celebrate and highlight all those amazing relationship renegades out there that they just don't get highlighted very much. So we just don't, what you focus on expands. And so we wanted to create more stories of all the amazing power couples out there that are doing it, and the world needs to know about it.
I love that. And I agree with you. The news is all the bad news, right? That's all. They just sensationalize the bad stuff. And so it's amazing that you're going to be out there showing how couples can be power couples together. Because a lot of people, that's another belief system I find, but you can't work with your husband or your spouse or your partner. It's too hard. I think our favorite couples are power couples. We had Sean and Sax Whalen on and what they're working on. So tell us about how that started and what you're taking it to.
Yeah, so the way it started, I guess I'll start off also just saying a little bit about my pain to purpose very quickly and how it, really came to fold here. So the pain to purpose for me is that I never got to see what a healthy, happy relationship was growing up. So I grew up in a domestic violence type household. Dad very abusive to my mom in a lot of different ways. And so it was really just fight or flight the entire time. And I just found, I remember at second grade, just my higher self telling me like, this is not the way that it should be. And I made a promise to myself then that I would never recreate this, that I would, first not become my father in that way. And hence the hero's journey started, right? And so I certainly went through a long hero's journey. And of course, I'm a student for life. So of course we're not perfect, but Rachel and I became in our own rights, self-development junkies, really. It was a blessing in disguise in a lot of ways. But fast forward to when Rachel and I met, this was back in 2018. I had a company at the time called Resilience for Humanity. I was helping a lot of oil and gas executives, because that's kind of like my past life that I ended up doing a 180 for, both on deep inner work, and then the other 50% was high performance. So, and it was just helping them build resilience in their life. And when I met with Rachel, she had a company called Disruptive Movement, and she can tell you about that.
That's cool.
And when we would talk and speak in front of everybody, we were kind of saying the same thing, just in a different way, with our own, of course, energetic blueprint. And so when we really kind of sat down, we were like, hey, why don't we, what would it be like if we did this together, really helping people, co-creating a world where healthy relationships are the new norm, but having like the divine masculine and the divine feminine there together as one. And what would that look like? And so, of course, after a year of conversation, we ended up birthing that. This was years ago, but that's a little bit about how my story into what I had, and then how we dissolved both of our companies to start Relationship Renegades.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about, going through hard things, when we really sat down together and is like, what was and is most of the most painful experiences that we both went through that we feel like we would want to really help people with. And it was all centered around relationships.
Yeah.
It was this deep longing to feel this meaningful connection with other people. And I had hit a point when I felt like I hit like a rock bottom, at least in the relationship world. And I was like, there's got to be a better way.
Right.
And I had this wake up moment when I'm like, wow, like if you want to be a doctor, you go to medical school. If you want to be a lawyer, you go to law school. If you want to be good at anything, you have to study it. And most people we're not studying about relationships, and yet we wonder why we struggle with them.
How do you teach people that? Because I completely resonate with what you're saying. Tony Robbins has a great quote that says, your biggest source of either joy or pain in your life is your most intimate relationship, your life partner, right? So how do you help people take that from a painful experience, which a lot of people do end up having if they don't have training or therapy or personal development? How do you help them get out of that and bringing it into a joyful, loving, thriving relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I'm always been obsessed with heroes, like the hero's journey, both as an actress and a filmmaker and just as a human. I think we're all on our own individual hero's journey. And I think massive shifts and changes can happen overnight, but I also do believe that lasting change can also take time. And so I think there's lots of different things that we do with people to help them. And really, I think it's not necessarily about learning new things. It's more about like unlearning things that aren't serving you anymore and getting back to who you really, really, really are and what we all come into the world with as little kids that are curious and playful and excited about life and have this wonderment. I think a lot of us lose that later in life. And we also get really jaded by getting our heart broken so many times. And then we create all these stories and all these characters that aren't really us. And everyone's playing these characters of who they think other people want them to be so that they feel loved. But you can't ever really be loved for who you are if you're never really if you're not being who you really are.
Yeah, I would just add to that, just, there's so many things that we do. You said, how do we do it, right? There's the coaching, the speaking, the events, the retreats. We do a creative model where we also entertain in the TV and film that we're a part of. But I think some of the themes that are integrated in a lot of those things will kind of speak to this. So one of the main themes at Relationship Renegades is to helping people on how to create a space for both partners feel safe, seen, heard, and loved. At the end of the day, like if we're about to get into an argument or something, it's always in the back of my mind, like, does my partner feel safe right now? Is she feeling seen right now? Because ultimately, like, I love this woman. Why wouldn't I want her to feel safe or seen or heard or loved? Yeah. So it's a good check, right? And there's ways of doing that, right? It takes a lot for a man to be able to like hold that space and listen, and to be able to just like have a woman cry and do nothing but just be, right? And so there's a lot that goes into like being able to be that. And then, some other ones that are coming to my mind is realities versus actualities. So that'd be another one, or triggers or gifts. These are a lot of things that we talk about. A lot of times, the number one human impediment is that we live in our heads. It's constant ego-centered. I'm not good enough. I don't have enough, or I'm better than mentality. And if we're in the past or the future, but I don't think it can be said enough that like, if I'm literally up here, I'm not up here, I'm not here. And so I could be subconsciously or consciously judging a partner, a friend, a business partner. And if that's the case, I'm literally blind because I'm just in my head with a program story. Yeah. Right. And I'm not really seeing the present moment unfolding of this beautiful woman. And so also just understanding triggers. So we just kind of help people with a lot of these things, and it shows up differently in the business. Okay.
So it sounds like you guys have really figured out some amazing relationship skills that are working really well for you. How is it working on the back end business side of things together as a couple?
Such a great question. And I wish that people I wish sometimes we had like cameras in our house so they could see how we
You should make that happen.
Things.
Yeah. That would actually be really, because we want to know behind the scenes what's going on, right? Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things is we really feel that play is very underrated. Yeah. And so even in our morning routine, we have something called morning shenanigans.
That's funny.
Which, we're both in biohacking and longevity and wellness. And in that space, it's a lot of like rigid routines, that you maybe follow. And we both kind of learned like, man, it doesn't feel good to feel so rigid all the time. And where is the play and the fun and the joy in all of this? Because also when you're in those states of joy, peace, and ease, you're actually aging slower. Because your body's doing all the things, it's in a happier state.
Can you give us an example of
morning shenanigans?
Yeah, morning shenanigans.
Morning shenanigans.
Everybody that wants to take this on, this is your challenge. Morning shenanigans. So first thing when you wake up, your goal is to make your partner laugh their face off.
There you go.
But you cannot break. You can't break.
You got to keep character.
Straight face.
Yeah.
That's an example right now.
You're saying the most ridiculous things that make no sense. This is kind of, we're talking about Saturday Night Live earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It really is just I could be saying like lamp. I love lamp.
Mm-hmm.
It's breaking the habit of being yourself. You're just trying to like say the most random stuff, but keeping the straight face. And I'll say in the beginning, I was very good at this, but Rachel has come a long way and has beat me. But yeah, I mean,
I want to see it. Do a morning shenanigan right now.
It's really interesting because so when we first started dating, he would read audition scenes with me. He's just so good at it. And my improv game has like 10x just from being together, which is really special. And really fun too. And now we, act together and make films together now and stuff.
Okay, let's see it. Let's see a morning shenanigan.
I think the lamp was a good example. I mean, yeah.
Stay tuned for more videos. We'll release them.
But it sounded like you have a challenge in there for everyone watching this show.
Yeah, I would love to challenge people to try it. Try whether it's with a friend or a partner, just being open to silliness and play. I often talk about,
I'm going to try it.
I think a lot of us have a hard time accessing fun because we've been so burnt out or jaded, or we feel like we have to be responsible all the time. And that little kid inside of us is dying to just come out and play. And first and foremost, in any relationship, the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself, because you are with you 24/7, 365. Like you're never getting away from you. And what kind of space are you creating for your soul to live in? I know for most of my life, I did not create a very fun, healthy, peaceful place for my soul to live in. And therefore all my relationships it was a projection of what was inside of me. And so when I finally learned how to create a safe space for me, and especially the little me, and that I let that little me play, dance and act and sing and be silly, and just everything in life got so much better. But I think it's a letting go of all this stuff, these characters that we think we have to play, and letting ourselves be silly. So that's my challenge.
Love it. So before we move on, I want to ask what it's like being in Hollywood, actress, and maybe you can share some of the behind the scenes stuff and maybe a memorable moment for you in a film.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think one of the most special films for me will always be my first film, which was Center Stage, because I had the first Center Stage I saw it when I was 14. I was going through a really traumatic time in my life, and it just changed me. I felt so lit up in that movie watching it. Just a 14-year-old little girl, Phoenix, Arizona, no ties to the entertainment industry. And I was just like, I want to do that. I want to act. I want to dance. I want to inspire people the way this movie inspired me. And I started talking about it. Everybody told me I was crazy. There was no way that was ever going to happen. And it was my own hero's journey to figure out how to possibly make it happen. I never once in a million years dreamed that I could actually play the lead in the sequel to the film. I didn't know they were even going to do a sequel.
Wow.
And
that's law of attraction for you, that you were inspired by that film and then you were in the sequel.
I had vision boards of it every day. I would write down one day I'm going to be in a movie like Center Stage, and I would watch it all the time to inspire me, because moving to LA when I was 18, I didn't know anybody. I was terrified. I was homesick. And I just kept watching the first one to remind me of why I was doing it. And so it's a crazy wild ride and story that I talk about how the whole journey of that. So Center Stage will always be so special to me. But also one of my new films coming out called Legend of the White Dragon, getting to act with someone who's super, super, super special to me that's no longer with us. His name is Jason David Frank. So it'll be his last film. And he was like the OG Power Ranger. Like he was like probably really honestly built the whole Power Ranger franchise. He was Tommy, like the original Green Ranger and White Ranger, and watched him growing up and obsessed over Power Rangers, just like I obsessed over Center Stage. So it was kind of wild to get to act alongside him and play Iris, who's this really amazing, female superhero character.
What's the premise of the show? Sounds amazing.
Yeah. The big message of the show is that even superheroes need help, which is really telling too, because Jason himself was a real life superhero. And, I don't think he gave so much to everybody else. And I think he was really struggling inside. And so I think it's a message that we all need to know. I need to hear it all the time. People probably like us that want to give and share and do so much and achieve so much. And I want to let my love talk here, but I think it's really important to the undoing of the lie that achievement leads to love. Because I had that story for a long time, that the more I achieved, the more I succeeded, the more I impressed people, the more loved I would be. And I had to learn the hard way that is such a lie. This is why I'm so
beautiful.
passionate about Relationship Renegades.
Wow.
You know what's so interesting actually about acting? So she's been doing it a long time and brilliant and beautiful. And like, when it comes to acting and producing, she's been doing some great producing. And I got into the TV and film world about 4 years ago, so fairly new. But what's interesting about relationships and everything that we've been talking about is what I've been learning is that like the actors to me are like the real people, and the real people out there are actors. And I'll break that down for a moment, is that I feel all of us, anytime that we didn't feel safe, seen, heard, or loved, anytime we had a traumatic experience, anytime that we had the perception of not being in control, right? Anytime something happened to us, we became a character without knowing it, meaning a wall, a mask, right? Like when I was growing up, I became like a peacemaker, and like I became like all these different characters. You know, when you're in business, you're like, oh, I have to be this certain way, and this is how I am. And it's like, and people they're trying to find themselves, but they keep continuing to wear a mask and put on more masks because they're afraid of like, for people really seeing them. And sometimes they don't even know who they are because they put on so many masks. But what I've learned about like A-list celebrity actors, or like just doesn't even have to be an award-winning actor, but like people who are really into the craft, it's like they have to be so present to be able to like really hear what you just said.
Right.
And like respond like completely raw, real, emotionally, like super vulnerable. Like, oh my gosh, sometimes we'll not share a certain feeling that's arising. We'll kind of push it down and be like, oh yeah, because maybe we're scared as to how I'll show up emotionally. Like I could just break down right now. Like who knows, right? And I'm like, wow, it's so interesting seeing this kind of flip in the industry of like, because if you see someone that is not doing a good job, it's because they're trying to act. You can tell that they're acting. They're like, oh yeah, they're not really in it, you know? And so it's just been this interesting, just random kind of observation that I think is just so profound.
So true.
Anyway, just wanted to
what do
add that.
you think, just staying on that line, what do you think is the key to really being present? Because there's tons of distractions around, truckloads.
I think the more you do the work, whether it's with us or anybody, right? It's just being more mindful, right? The first step is awareness, right? If I'm in my head being triggered, let's say you said something that triggered me, right? Whether I react to it or there's something going in my head, oh yeah, you know what? He just said, you know, I'm in my head. I'm not obviously in the present.
Right.
When you do the work, you become more aware that you're in your head, right? You're like, oh my gosh, I'm creating a story in my head. And you understand that it's just a story, right? Like the way me and Rachel communicate is like, hey babe, I have this story in my head. Because they know we talk about like true self and false self. I'm like, I have this story in my head, babe, that, you know, my ego self, my false self is having this like these thoughts, feelings, emotions about this situation, right? The story I have in my head is X, Y, Z. When you're doing some of the work, and I can maybe give one practical tip of what that is, but I think when you do that, the decision point is increased. Like you're no longer reacting, right? You have a longer decision point. Like there's more of a spotlight on something. So if I got triggered, the work would allow me to kind of like breathe a little bit more, have a little bit more seconds to be able to be like, you know what? I don't want to take a left anymore. I'm going to go right this time because I have more bandwidth now to make a better decision. And, you know, one thing that I could just say as a practical tip to become in the present moment is there's a 3-step process about like triggers are gifts. First of all, the understanding that triggers are gifts, because it's just something that hasn't been healed yet. It's just giving you a response of like something that hasn't been healed yet. So the practical tip there is to smile, saying there's me doing it again. This is all internal. And then just breathing to reset and like just welcoming whatever emotions coming up. Most people will hide, suppress, and deny emotions, right? And distract against emotions.
Fascinating.
And I don't want to go too long. You're smiling because it's loving kindness for yourself and something quickly, easy to do. It's like a pattern interrupt. There's me doing it again. It's just the reps of like, oh, I keep doing this stuff. It's just kind of like an awareness, kind of getting yourself outside into observer mode of like what's going on. And then the last thing is just to welcome the emotion. Because once you feel whatever that is, it'll dissipate. It'll disappear. But most people don't want to feel.
I love all those. No, it was really good.
You just said, you know, to get out of your head or in the present moment, I think curiosity is massive. It's just an amazing tool and we you know have these different like wearable reminders on different merch that we have, and one of them says seek to understand. Because I think so many times we're trying so hard to be understood, right? We just want to be understood. Why don't you understand me? Well, what are you doing to try to understand the human in front of you? And oftentimes in, you know, if you're in an argument, it's very hard when we talk about too, when you're triggered, we're blind, deaf, and dumb. So just knowing that, like, okay, if anytime I'm triggered, I can't see the reality. I can't see the actuality. I'm only seeing my reality, the stories in my head. Not true. but I'm blind. I'm literally blind when I'm triggered, and I'm deaf. I can't really hear what people are saying to me because I have my own, like, I'm just, all my projections are blocking that. And dumb, like, because I'm not thinking clearly. Because you also have, when you're triggered, you have a rush of adrenaline through your body that makes you literally not be able to think as clearly. So sometimes, everyone handles things differently, but if you are triggered, knowing what works best for you, like sometimes for me, like, I need to go step outside. I need to go move. I need to go hit a bag. I need to go dance to music. I need to go do something to release a lot of that energy so that then I can be in a more peaceful, aligned place to have an actual healthy conversation.
It's beautiful. Parting words. So we'll give you each a chance to say what would be, your greatest takeaway. What would be the thing that you can share with people and say, hey, this is one thing that you can start. And there's already been incredible takeaways, by the way, like the content and what you've trained and the work you do is amazing.
Don't fight the river, be the river. I think a lot of times we're just wanting to control a certain outcome, trying to do, rather than just be and allow. Like, you can only like water the plant so much, put it in the sunlight, trim the leaves, all that kind of stuff. You have to let the tree be, and you have to allow it to grow. I think there's just such a powerful of just being, like, especially for men, like standing in your power and just being, like, let the wind hit you, let the sun rays hit you, like, feel that. And just kind of see where the river is taking you and allow it to take you where it needs to. Because I think for me anyway, and what I've seen in the abundance personally, professionally, to me, it's 10x. To me, it's exponential when I just let go and let God and allow me to just enjoy where the river's taking me and enjoy life and what's around me and where that river's taking me. And I think it's a lot funner that way. It's a lot more peaceful that way. It's a lot more fully alive that way. Yeah. And you start to really find a lot of synergistic and divine moments in that. And so I think I've just found that throughout my life, both personally and professionally.
I think mine goes kind of hand in hand with that. Tomorrow is not promised. We literally do not know if we have tomorrow. And I think it's the constant reminder to get so grateful for every little thing that is right now. I think oftentimes, especially like if I could go back and tell my younger self something, it would be like, freaking enjoy the ride. Like, because I was so stressed out all the time trying to make so many things happen. Yeah. And I'm so grateful for that little me that was a freaking hustler and so driven. But that drive was coming from a really unhealthy place of just trying to prove myself in order to be accepted or get loved. Yeah. And when you're coming from that place, man, even if you achieve some pretty amazing things, you'll still find that you feel pretty lonely inside and something feels off, and you continue to try to reach a void and feel something that, you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole, it just doesn't work. So I do think, do everything that you possibly can to enjoy the time that you have here on this earth. Because I think one of my favorite quotes is, creativity is God's gift to us. Our gift back to God is using our creativity.
Oh,
beautiful.
That's so good.
So
you guys,
creativity meaning like play, create, dance, paint,
enjoy
sing.
the ride.
Yeah.
Have
fun.
Appreciate this gift that you've been given, this gift of life. It is a gift. And at the end of my life, I just want to be like, I freaking lived it. I enjoyed it. I appreciated all the ups, down, twists and turns, because the whole human experience, like I used to judge good and bad so much. Oh, this is a good experience. This is a bad experience. But so many of the worst things that happened to me, quote unquote, worst things, ended up being the best things that ever happened to me.
Amen to that.
And so getting to see things, pulling back and saying like, oh, this feels so hard right now, but there's a gift in here. If I can just like be open to it and like, what is it? Like, just be so curious about that gift.
That's so beautiful. You guys shared a lot of golden nuggets today. It was such an honor to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Best way to engage with you.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. I think Relationship Renegades on Instagram is probably like the best, and you'll find both of us, Rachele Brooke Smith, Palafox, and
Emilio Palafox.
Excellent. Thank you. It's been an absolute honor.
Thank you guys so much.
Amazing.